Baseball has always been more than a game. It's a classroom, a proving ground, a place where character is tested, resilience is forged, and champions are built. Join Coach Chuck, Coach Bucket, and Coach Matt as they share decades of experience, practical wisdom, and conversations that reach far beyond the diamond. Because we're not just developing better athletes, we're building better people, one family, one coach, one player, one community at a time. This is Champions, Not Captives.
Everyone, and welcome to Champions Not Captives, the show where we believe baseball is about so much more than balls, strikes, and scoreboards. I'm Coach Chuck Barnard, and every week we'll explore the lessons that baseball teaches about confidence, character, leadership, resilience, and life. Because what baseball prepares our athletes to become after the game is over is even more important than the game itself. Every player eventually hangs up the uniform. The question is, what kind of person will they become because they wore it? That's what this show is all about. Each week, my co-hosts, Matt Rogers and Paul Bucket Benzer, and I will have honest conversations about youth baseball, travel baseball, coaching, parenting, player development, and the mindset that helps athletes thrive both on and off the field. We'll celebrate what this game does well, challenge some of the trends that concern us, and share practical ideas that parents, coaches, and athletes can begin applying immediately. Whether you are raising a young ball player, coaching a team, competing yourself, or simply someone who believes sports should develop great people as well as great athletes, we're glad you're here. And before we introduce today's topic and bring in Coach Matt and Coach Bucket, let's take a moment to recognize the organizations that make this show possible.
The game is over. Maybe your child hit the game-winning home run. Maybe they struck out with the bases loaded. But one of the most important moments of the game may still be ahead. The ride home. For more than 50 years, Coach Bucket Paul Benzer has watched how the words parents and coaches use after the game can build confidence and resilience, or create pressure that lasts far beyond the final out. The ride home is about turning those 20 minutes into something more. More connection. More perspective. More unconditional love. Because someday, they may forget the score, but they will never forget how you made them feel. Order the ride home today.
If you're a coach, a parent, or someone who believes sports should build more than just athletes, Matt Rogers' new book is one you'll want to read. The recipe to be a great coach isn't about drawing up better plays. It's about building better people. Drawing on more than 30 years of coaching, thousands of games, and hundreds of athletes, Matt shares practical lessons on leadership, integrity, communication, and creating an environment where young people can thrive. If your goal is to become the kind of coach athletes remember for the right reasons, this book belongs on your shelf.
If you want to play college baseball, talent alone won't separate you from the pack. Thousands of talented players are chasing the same goal. They practice. They put in the work. They want the opportunity. So what separates the players who get there? Often, it's how a player responds to pressure, failure, adversity, and confidence when the game gets hard. Because when talent is equal, mindset can become the difference. Train the mindset that separates equally talented players. Visit collegetrackbaseball.com.
Welcome back to Champions Not Captives. There's a remarkable story unfolding on the road to this year's Little League World Series. Tulsa National was disqualified from the Southwest Regional Tournament after Little League International determined that an ineligible player had participated. Tulsa challenged that decision, and what followed involved another team believing it was headed to Williamsport, a court order, lawyers, and controversy, and that has received national attention. We're not lawyers. We're not here to try to decide who's guilty or innocent. But the story raises a question that reaches far beyond one Little League team. In sports, we're constantly looking for an advantage. That's part of competition. But what happens when adults begin searching for ways around rules or stretching rules or finding loopholes because doing so might give their team a better chance to win? At what point do we stop asking, can we do this, and start asking, should we do this? And when adults cross the line, who ultimately pays the price? That's where we're going today. So let's bring in Coach Matt and Coach Bucket and start the conversation. Welcome, gentlemen. I don't know how much you guys have been following that news. I first saw it on one of those Facebook groups I'm part of, and somebody had posted something about it, so I started doing a little bit of digging. Um, and I don't want to like dig in too deep, except all I can really do is go by what's being reported. But it certainly speaks to what we've had in conversations in private and to a certain extent on this. And the idea of so much pressure to win that adults are making these decisions that impact not only their team, but really the teams they play as well, right? Those kids along the way. So for those who aren't familiar, apparently, again, this is just coming from articles. There was an article in Sports Illustrated online that covered a little bit. But apparently, Tulsa was accused by 3 different other leagues of using an ineligible player based on the Challenger program. And the Challenger program is a program for special needs players. And the accusation was that they didn't even have one Challenger game the whole season. And this player was even questionable whether they would have even qualified for Challenger. And anyways, the whole story, Tulsa got a court order so that they were supposed to play again in the Southwest Championship game, but the other team refused to play. They were headed to Williamsport. Crazy, right? It's a whole crazy story. So I guess my question for you guys to kind of begin this is where do we cross that line about trying to, you know, give our team the advantage, teaching kids how to win because that's part of what competition is, and this idea of can we or should we, right? That's really a question between morals and ethics, right? There's from a moral standpoint, it's like what is right or wrong, what is legal, illegal, and the ethics is should we? So, Matt, what are your thoughts on this? You've been heavily involved in Little League over the years. I don't know how much you knew of the story, but
Yeah.
what are your thoughts?
I wish I could say I was surprised at hearing it, but honestly, in my opinion, it's just another story and another year. It's nothing new to me. It's adults putting winning ahead of everything, including following rules, morals, ethics, and again, they're missing the real opportunity, which is to teach kids life lessons. I mean, what are you teaching your team? Even if they didn't get caught and they got these illegal kids in and they go on and they win, what are you teaching the kids? What did you really accomplish? I think you lost. You lost the opportunity to teach them the right thing to do in life. When I had my son's little league team in 2014, 12 years ago, that was the year that Chicago won it, ultimately only to get disqualified for having illegal players. So I wish this shocked me. It doesn't. And for them to use a league like that, the Challenger division, to violate rules is repulsive. If that happened, we don't know for sure. If they did it, it's repulsive. You're taking advantage of a league, and then you didn't even play any games. Frankly, the Challenger division should have played more games than whatever team you're trying to stack. But they missed an opportunity to teach life lessons. And your question is, where do you draw the line? Then you draw the line with what the rules are. Whether you agree with them or not, you follow rules, right? I talked about the acronym before that I teach T-ballers, ROOTS, respect for rules, opponents, teammates, officials, and self. And those are opportunities to really start to teach these kids when they're 4 and 5, much less when they're 11 or 12. And then it never stops. I'm a college coach. Bucket works with pro guys. It's still teaching. It's still always doing the right thing. Bucket wouldn't tell a major leaguer to juice, or he wouldn't tell him to break the rules. These people are just missing such great opportunities. It's entitlement. Again, back to the coaching thing. People think they're entitled to be a coach. You're not entitled. It's a privilege to coach. with that privilege is a huge and great opportunity. That opportunity isn't seeing how many trophies you can win. We're all competitive. We all want to win. We hate to lose, and that's great. Compete the right way. The opportunities to have an impact on these kids' lives, a positive impact, not teaching them how to cheat. It's sinful.
Okay, you want to chime in on that?
Yeah, it's very sad, in my opinion. And Matt hit it. The real loss is that the kids don't get to experience the true value of baseball, and the parents get in and they convolute it and come up with all these reasons. But if you think about this, cheating's been going on in everything, from Lance Armstrong to Barry Bonds. So parents see that, the pinnacle of sports, they do it. Well, it's no big deal in Little League. And the thought of even doing it as a head coach, because I've been in with travel ball teams, and kids would say, we could get this kid Johnny over here. He lives in New Mexico, but we could fly him every week to California. No, they come up with all kinds of stuff, and I just say, well, what's that gonna do for us? Well, we could win. No, we can win with the 12 guys we got, as well as adding more players. But then the parents get involved. They put this pressure on these coaches that it's going to be okay. It's just a Little League thing. And, the reputation of the Oklahoma Tulsa Little League this is not their first time they've been caught. They had the same problem with girls softball. And it's a black mark for Little League, but the biggest loss is the kids they're being taught that it's okay. I stole the Snickers bar in the 7th grade, and I'll never forget that day because I did something wrong, and my dad made me work there for a week sweeping up the parking lot, and I learned a lesson. And I can tell you right now that I've never cheated in anything to do with life or baseball. Doesn't mean I'm perfect. I've run a stop sign, yes. I've gone over 70 miles an hour, yes. But I know that I'm doing something wrong. And that's why I'm a real big fan of Lou Holtz. The 3 rules: do what's right and avoid what's wrong. And if you don't know the difference, get out the Bible. Okay? Rule number 2 is always do the best you can, and only you know you're doing the best you can. And rule number 3 is treat others the way you like to be treated. I mean, they are so simple. And I've followed those rules ever since I met Lou Holtz. And wherever I teach, those are the rules we have. And baseball is the same way. Do the right thing. It's sad. It's very sad.
I've said earlier that when I grew up, and I'm not saying there weren't leagues and stuff that pushed the envelope when I grew up, but in my world, we didn't. I still remember vividly being on the 12-year-old All-Star team, and we had a very good team. We made it all the way to the New England Finals back in the day when there was single elimination. But probably the second best pitcher in that league wasn't allowed to participate because he was living with his father during that part of the year, lived with his mother during the other part of the year. His legal residence was when he was living with his mother, even though he lived with his father during, what was basically the Little League season. Little League would not grant him a waiver. We thought that was unfortunate, but he's living with his dad during this time of year. Whatever it was, nobody, we didn't try to find some way around it. He didn't play, he didn't participate. He would have helped our team immensely. He was an outstanding ball player. Went on and played college baseball. Actually, played college baseball at Bowdoin. He was a really good ball player. But there's no thought whatsoever of how can we get him on the team? How can we do this and not get caught or whatever? And I'm afraid. Yeah, go ahead.
Just imagine, though, if let's say they got through that regional and they got to Williamsport, as a coach, I'm laying in bed every night going, this isn't right. What if we get caught? And then you ruin everything, like flights and money and all this crazy stuff. There's no way that coach could have enjoyed anything about it, knowing in the back of his mind this is illegal. I mean, what a terrible way to say I went to Williamsport.
Oh,
Doesn't add up.
completely. And it's the kids end up ultimately paying the price, right? So now you have those kids not only from the lessons that they're learning, and so not just the Tulsa kids, but what about those teams Tulsa beat on the way to get to the Southwest Regionals, who never had a chance to actually get there and try to prove that they were the best team because they were beaten by a team that was using an ineligible player before it was even discovered that they were using an ineligible player. So you have those kids who missed out on opportunity because some parents apparently were violating the rules. There's never a vacuum, right, when you are breaking the rules. Um, One of the questions I guess I have for you guys is how do we like those rules are there for a reason, and I think we understand why they're there. Um, the enforcement's there, but I don't know. It seems like there's got to be. I don't know. I don't know what we could do. It just bothers me the fact that this, and as Matt you said, this isn't uncommon, right? Like you see it happen more often. I, I don't know. Is there is this a trend that an indication of where we've fallen societally? And I think I love the fact that Little League is challenging that court decision, saying no, we have rights to set our rules and enforce our rules. What are your thoughts on that, on the league and the leagues having those rules and doing that to keep competition fair and just and all that?
I don't mean to get too political on this show, but I think this is a microcosm of society. I think society in general, we've gotten lax with follow through with punishment. That goes from government to parenting to coaching. You either have rules and you follow them, or you don't. What's the point of having rules? Even in society, there's not a lot of. I'm not saying we get back to eye for an eye, tooth for a tooth, and these people, are have their hands cut off. But there should be legitimate, serious rules. And Coach Bucket, if that league has been, proven guilty of something in the past, they should lose their charter. There are real serious ways you can just like society. Again, if I go out and murder somebody, I should go to jail for life or worse, in my opinion. But if we don't have really follow through with rules in sports and in life, they're going to break rules again. This is just one team that got caught. How many teams cheated and didn't get caught? We don't know. But what's the follow through? What's going to happen to them?
Right. And then on top of that, it's way worse in travel ball because they don't have rules. The travel
Right.
ball league, the rules are very vague, and I can tell you hundreds of examples of kids. They call them guest players. They bring them in for a tournament. I ran Cooperstown All-Star Village, and security called me at 12:30 at night when I'm sleeping and saying there's a limousine pulling up to the front to drop a kid off for a team. I'm like, what? And I put all the numbers together and all the information together. Well, he flew a kid in because that team that he's going to be on is 8-0, and they're in the championship bracket. So, I mean, that was one of many. I can't tell you how many birth certificates were falsified. But, what are you going to just ruin the whole trip? So it's way worse than travel ball. Little League is least, they are asking to disband them from Little League. That's Little League's pushback to take away their charter, because it's not the first time. And I'm not here to gossip, but I've read a number of things that have, there's not a good track record. And the bottom line is, the kids, how do they walk around and go to school every day and their friends are calling them cheaters? And, the downstream effect is huge. And with the parents, they're no longer talking to each other anymore. It's just,
And I
it's
want to go.
very, go ahead.
I want to kind of that downstream effect again. So, and again, like we're talking about these consequences and who ends up paying the price. So if they lose their charter, which might be a very, the wise decision, what have you, who suffers? Well, the kids suffer because now there's no league there for them to play in. Then what happens? So now maybe they have to only do travel ball at 5 times the cost, or they, like, what do they do?
Chuck, sorry to interrupt, but I believe, and this is back from being a Little League president for 8 or 9 years, however long it was, because I forgot to step back when they said step forward if you want to be president. I think that if you are in a town where you don't have a chartered league, you can play in a neighboring league legally. So the kids now will play with another league legally that is following the rules theoretically. But this stuff isn't rocket science. This isn't hard to figure out. We're all parents too, right? If when our kids were little, I'm sitting in my living room right now, if my son or my daughter were climbing up on the coffee table and jumping off, and I say, don't do that. And they say, why? And I say, well, because, or if you do, you're going to a time, whatever it is, and they keep doing it and I don't do anything. You think they're going to stop doing it? It's the same thing. It's the same thing. It's the same thing, whether it's Little League or out in the streets and all the violence we see. If we had more accountability and follow through with actual laws and punishment and made the punishment legitimate, as opposed to, oh, don't do that again, a little soft. Again, not to get political, but one side is very lenient and the other one isn't. And we're way too lenient.
You got to send a message.
Yep.
I think too, like my grandfather was a teacher, a principal, my uncle was, and back and when my parents went to school, if you were caught cheating, you could be expelled from school, like not just suspended, like kicked out of school. There are virtually, as a teacher, and even back when I was in high school, there are virtually no consequences for being caught cheating. You might get a bad grade on that one test, but oftentimes that was meaningless. Like you just make it up, you do something else. There's really no consequences for cheating. And I think that has spread into a whole lot of areas. Like,
So Chuck, again, I didn't want to get political, but you just went there. So public education has become a farce. And I have relatives and friends who are teachers, and I pity them. I guess it's their choice to go into that quote unquote profession now. And I'm sorry, but I think it's sinful what we're doing to our kids. There are 2 local schools here, one in my town and one in a neighboring town. If you get caught cheating, the punishment is you can't take that test again until the next day.
Right.
And if you fail, you just keep taking it over until you're happy. Yeah. That wasn't the way it was with me. And I ended up going to Cheverus High School, which is a private school, and people can knock it all you want. But there's rules and accountability that were there then and they're there now. And that's what we need.
Well, it's interesting because everywhere I've coached in non-professional baseball, and I get 2 assistants every year. I invite to be on my staff, and I literally make them read the rule book. I have $15. I buy 4 rule books, and we read them together. And one coach says, well, why are we doing this? I said, so you understand the rules of the game. You know, you can't argue this and you can't argue that, or you look like an idiot. So if you read the rule book, you know what the rules are. And every coach that's coached with me, it says that really helped me, because now I know more about the game within the game, what you can't do or challenge or look like a non-professional coach or arguing about something that's not, that you can't argue. So it's the parents, and that's why I wrote my book. And, you know, I can tell you 1,000 stories and the ride home, and I can imagine the ride home with those kids. Oh my God, that coach is an idiot. Why did he do this? Well, now you just sabotage the kid, and he's the sounding board. There's the ones who suffer. The parents that change the chapter and go on to, who knows what their life's like? Maybe they're not good people. I don't know. But I'm telling you, they ruined it for the kids, period. And the kids that they played against, and the kids that they played against them. And it's a whole downstream trickle effect. And nobody wins when you cheat.
You know,
you can have the $20 trophy, but there's nothing behind it.
Yeah. You know, when you bring up the parents, that's another trend I've noticed, being in public education, to see it in sports as well. But it's now there's this mentality that if a kid complains about the coach or teacher or something, immediately there's a pushback, like the teacher's wrong, the teacher did something bad, the coach did something bad, the coach did, they're out to get my, there's this automatic siding with your kid instead of first trying to figure out exactly what was going on, like exactly what's the perception here. But there, and I've noticed over the 30 years I was in education, it got worse and worse about an assumption of teachers and coaches out to get your kid. I don't know if I like using that terminology, but that's kind of what's popping in my head. And that's I don't know how that changed exactly, but that can be really detrimental on all kinds of levels. You know,
I think it changed, Chuck. It starts with entitlement, and that's the beginning of the change. And then with entitlement comes lack of accountability, and they're hand in hand. It's a slippery slope.
Yeah, no, I agree. You know, one of the things when I was thinking about this story is when I was coaching in the Little League I was coaching in, once a year, opening day, they would have everybody recite the Little League pledge. And that was it, right? One time. But the Little League pledge is the kind of pledge that a lot of these kind of organizations that were started, you know, generation or two or three generations ago would have. And the Little League pledge was something simple. It's I trust in God. I love my country. I will respect its laws. I will play fair and strive to win. But win or lose, I will always do my best. Simple, right? But you know what? Maybe we need to have not just the kids cite that regularly, but also maybe the parents should recite that regularly, because those simple reminders, you know, are profound. They really do have a profound impact on shaping character of people. So I think we're beginning to kind of run a little bit towards the end of this one. So where would we go from here? Like, you know, again, Little League is a huge organization, and they really get in the news because of the Little League World Series has become such a, you know, it's such a big thing, right? You get to be on ESPN and all these local regional television stuff. I personally think part of the problem has been that people get, you know, that moment of fame, right? My 60 minutes in fame, and the parents, when they see their name on the back of their child's jersey, it's them who are living through it for not all, obviously not all, but for enough that it becomes a problem to win. Like, I've got to get to the World Series, right? I've got to get to the regional, what have you. I haven't competed in that All-Star tournament and having my kid. I love it. But I think the downside is that pressure to win. You guys want to have a final word on where we go from there?
No, I agree. You hit it. The pressure to win has become the priority and redundant, but these parents and coaches are missing the opportunity to teach valuable life lessons to these young boys and girls.
It's ditto. My closing statement is the parents stay out of the game and let the kids play and just do the next right thing. It's that simple. Because when it's all over with, nobody even cares at the end of the day. They really don't. It's an excitement for about 3 or 4 days, and then it goes away. And how are you going to live with yourself knowing that you cheated? So stay out of the game and let the kids enjoy the experience. Period.
Yeah. Well, thank you guys again. It's a big topic. We could delve in a lot deeper. Uh, Maybe we will actually a little bit more in the next episode as we kind of branch off on that. But the timing I thought was perfect of this because it's some things, conversation that we had privately and a little bit on previous episodes. And to all the people listening out there, I know in my own personal life I've done a whole lot of self-reflection. I'm far from perfect, made lots of mistakes in the past, but each one was an opportunity for me to learn and to get better. And you know, uh, all those lessons that my mom and my dad would teach me. Even sometimes when I was like in middle school, rebellious young teenager, I can look back and go, all right, they were right, right? Like, yeah, okay, Dad, Mom, thank you
Yeah.
for getting that seed planted. You were right, and I can admit it now that I'm in your shoes. So, uh, anyways, for all of you out there, I hope you will tune in for the next episode and go out and live each day to the fullest. And remember, uh, tell your kids how much you love them, support them, and let's do the right thing by them. Until the next time, enjoy life.